If you're happy, like all the time, you have no obstacles, you're either, you're either a Buddha or you're not practicing. Um, they used to tell us in church that the devil don't bother nobody who ain't doing nothing. That's what they all said. So you could tell. So we look around and see who had troubles in the church, and we would think, oh, they must be working because the devil is trying to hinder them. It's funny how we can understand or we can reject something when it's couched in a certain language, and when you put it in another language or from another perspective, it can be accepted. You know. Uh, Thank you. Sorry, that's my diabetes thing. It might be in the door. Okay. So a lot of times our rejection comes from how something is said, and we get so offended by how it is said or the context in which it is couched that we can't receive the wisdom. And so it's like I want to be free, but if you don't give it to me in this way, I rebuke you. I reject it. But so the first thing that we commit to in listening to the Dharma is to accept it as something that might rub against the way we ordinarily think. Uh, and take it as an instruction that if we put it into actual practice and not just think about it and agree or disagree with it, but if we will actually put it into practice, then we can know for ourselves whether there's some benefit to it for me, or whether it takes me out of my suffering, or whether it produces more suffering. And he said, and based on that, you know what to do. Whether to do more of it, whether to do less of it, you know. And so it's designed to transform our minds. And this means that it has to be vast enough to cover the minds of all the people. Someone's in sorrow, someone's in grief, someone's in despair, someone has experienced a loss. Someone's full of fear. Someone is angry. Every emotion you can think about is probably in somebody's mind in this room. And so the Dharma has to have a transcendent, transforming capacity to meet each mind, each mind stream, and point it in the direction of its liberation. That means if you're over here on the left, it might say, go that way, think like that. And it takes you to the right. If you're on the right, it's saying, go that way, incline your mind that way. And it takes you to the left. If you're up here, it may take you down here. If you're down here, it may take you up here. So in every individual mind, there is this mixture that tries to or can allow you, if you allow it, to move you from where you are in your position of suffering towards, um, when I say enlightenment, I mean towards lightening up that which disturbs you so much. And so, if we practice these things we hear, we will get results, and there will be a transformation of your mind. How much of a transformation? How much depends on each individual, how much transformation they will allow. It also depends on how much they can allow. So that's where karmic ties come in. Sometimes a person wants to be in a place that they just don't have the karmic fruit that allows them to be on that step. So what they're reaching for is futile. They cannot reach. They cannot reach and attain it. Uh, But suppose they can partially understand it, then they will have some partial release or from the suffering or the negative karma that manifests in their minds. Now, negative karma doesn't show up only in the mind, but it shows up in our material or physical field. So it can show up as friends that are bad friends. It can show up as friends that actually we think are good friends to us. But in that good friendship, it supports some way of thinking and understanding and acting that ultimately has to be abandoned for you to move forward. So we think it can show up as no money, it can show up as money, it can show up, as never being recognized, it can show up as fame. So it's not these things, praise and blame and loss and gain and pleasure and pain and fame and shame, as hard and fast indicators of what causes the vicissitudes of life. When you understand that we have all 8 of those that operate in our life, and it's being able to not be attached to any one of them is where our freedom lies, not to be attached to any of it. So when I get or when I lose, or when I'm recognized or when I'm ignored, uh, and if we can see where our mind is at any particular moment and move it to that middle place that we are not perturbed nor encouraged, then we find the way of escape out of our suffering. Um, when I was a Taoist, I discovered a teaching, a teacher, um, and his name was Shimron. And what struck me, and he was Japanese, and I was into Japanese, martial arts and so forth at that time before I switched to Chinese, um, and that's how I ended up getting into Taoism. And then I abandoned the martial arts and went to the internal arts. And then I discovered Buddhism, and I abandoned all of it for the Dharma. But he said something that struck me, which is what made me read his teachings. He said, I am such that I do not know right and wrong and cannot distinguish the false from what is true. I lack even small compassion and small wisdom, and yet I enjoy teaching others. And it touched me so deeply because whenever we learn something, rather than following it to its ultimate conclusion, we right away take a bite and then want to, it's for other people. Um, and in that process, we give away the um, we give away that which we were discovering for our own freedom. You see, the only way that you can give this away truly is from a place of freedom. Otherwise, the encouragement to not be one who wants to teach too soon is based upon that, because you rob yourself before you gain the actual freedom. It's not to withhold, it's not to keep anybody from doing anything. It's to ensure that one has uprooted the conceit I first. Because if you don't uproot that, then that I-ness that we have is what keeps us bound in a samsaric view. As long as we have a samsaric view, we stay in samsara. Right, exactly. And so this negative karma manifests in what appears to be negative ways in our life and what appears to be positive ways in our life. But of instead of using it to wash ourselves, um, we we don't fully heal. And in our not healing, then we're not able to prepare. And when we join with others, we get corrupted by or corrupt them with our own with our own sorrows. And he said, why is this? Because you yourself are untrained. So he's speaking to us in a certain way to not be so quick to think, I got it, I understand it, but to keep chewing on it and to keep pondering on it. When we talk about meditation and having a mind that is empty, that's the kind of mind that all delusions have fallen away. If they haven't fallen away, then when you're sitting in meditation, it is to ask a a question. Ask a small question, get small answer. Ask a middling question, get a middling answer. Ask a big question, get a big answer. And when the mind asks the question and the mind gets the answer, then that's one little packet of peace that we enter into. So it allows us to direct our mind, or I could say what we're doing is directing our mind towards purifying the mind of false or erroneous impressions. And these impressions actually come forward in our life. They're like latent tendencies. Let's say that if you do a particular thing or you engage in something or you know something, there is an imprint that is made on the mind. And it just stays there until there is some event, some interaction, some relationship that waters it. And when it is watered, then it manifests in your life. And when that manifests in your life, you don't really know like how this came to be. I just bumped into them in the store and they said this and or this happened and now I'm bombed out. And we think like this is like has no rhyme or reason, but it does. It's because we are laden and with laden with latent tendencies that uh, arise when impacted by certain actions, certain environments, certain people in our life. So we have people that we don't like for some reason, we don't know why. We have people that we love, and you know how love goes, like we don't know why, because because we like to talk about the good parts of love, yeah, but when we really think about it, some of the parts are not that good, you know. But we lean towards the part that is good, and we diminish or minimize the parts that are not. And so we have the craving and an attachment towards that which is good, uh, and it causes us to suffer because that one that we hold so tightly to um, also comes with some baggage. You know what that baggage is, right? It's their latent tendencies. It's their latent tendencies. Yeah. And so trying to find relief in these external conditions and external relationships is not going to be possible. And so when we know that, we begin to hold conditions and relationships in a different way. And that's why the Dharma is not sentimental. It's it's very logical, but we like sentiment because sentiment makes us feel good. It makes us happy. But what I am not that sentimental about does not cause me to suffer. What I am not sentimental about does not cause my mind to be upset and perturbed. So when we're talking about the middle way, it doesn't mean like to get in the middle and not be hot or cold, but it means to be able to be in the presence of the whole spectrum of what goes with relationship, or the whole spectrum of what goes with a particular condition, and just to know where on that spectrum I am or we are at this moment today. That's all. To just observe and know I am here. To observe and know I am here. And then what I do is I feed myself the wisdom that I'm learning by putting it into application to balance out where I am today along the midline of the spectrum. So we're constantly balancing. It's like walking on a tightrope. And we're constantly leaning a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. We think that we can walk straight across the tightrope, but if you do, it's impossible. It's impossible to do. And so the Buddha said we have to be flexible, a little leaning. If the wind is blowing from this way, maybe we balance by leaning into the wind. Or if the wind is blowing that way, we lean into the wind this way. And in this way, we balance. And that's the key to advancing in your liberation and in your freedom. So it's a decision that we make that I want to be free. I want to be free from what binds me. And then we have to take the action to produce that freedom. Now, if we have to lean in the opposite direction, that tells me right off the bat, if I'm inclined to lean to the right and I've got to lean to the left, that tells me that that's not going to be a comfortable inclination. So I'm all set up for discomfort. That's the first thing. I'm set up for discomfort because or shifting or changing of the mind, but in the process, I know that it's what's going to bring me to balance. And when I'm balanced, then I don't have to put forth so much effort. I can just power down and I can be with things. So trying to meditate is not sitting here like just being silent, and the mind's just churning, churning, churning. It is for there to be an absence of movement of the mind. And to get that absence of movement of the mind, one has to reckon with and balance wherever the mind is. So if the mind's inclining or craving or leaning toward in this direction, we have to make a movement in this direction to allow us to come to a sort of like a homeostasis. But once we do, then the mind settles down, and there is a kind of peace, and it's a peace that the world can't give you. So unless we it said uh, what king goes to war without counting up the cost. It's like that when you enter the Dharma, you should know that this is going to be the prescription. You know, I don't know if anybody else has doctors like me, and I know we all have. They have a new thing at the pharmacies now. Like they just automatically refill. You had refills when you were empty. You went there and put in a refill. Well, now they automatically refill them for you and call you and say your refill is ready.
And charge you.
Yeah, your refill is ready. And so they're constantly having to put my refills back on the shelf. You know, if I want a refill, I'll come get it. You know, but don't you, you know, so I know they have some of that going on because that helps them to make more money, you know, and it helps kind of move you along to go get your medicine. That's not the real reason. It's to make more money, to make sure that they sell it. But I even have doctors that my doctors call me, mostly because they know that I don't always do the things that, you know, they tell me to do. So they'll be checking up on me to see if I'm doing it. And I had one doctor that just dropped me because she said, when you come in, because you haven't done the things you need to do, they don't pay me for your office visit, you know. And so then I understood that it wasn't like real concern for me. It was to make sure she got paid, but that's the system that they're in. Ultimately, she left and went independent, you know, because of that, but not before I left her. Um, and so there's this mindset that we have to do. Not that, oh, Buddhism is gonna like fix all the issues in my life. It's not that. If we come in with that notion and with that idea, we're going to be sorely disappointed. But what it does do for us is it teaches us how to handle and how to solve our own problems. So there's not a lot of talk in uh, spiritual environments about accomplishment. There's not a lot of talk about accomplishment, and that's why people don't have a lot of confidence in spiritual practice. It's just a good sounding woo-woo stuff, you know. But but when one knows for themselves that when they put this even into practice, even though I want to wallow in my anger because they did something to me, and this is like if you do in that, it's like, you know, like maybe getting shot with an arrow by somebody, and then you shooting yourself again, double pain, you know. And it's just think about it because they said what they said, they did what they did, and then they're going on about their business. You're angry, you're suffering this pain and this hatred towards yourself. It's not affecting them. They don't know. They don't even care, you know, but you feel it constantly. It's constantly eating away. It's constantly gnawing at you, and you're causing your own suffering. So it says like you have to abandon that, you know. And it says, are you willing to abandon that? I have to say, I really want to give up how I feel. And then how do I do that? That's where the teachings come in. It gives you a way to look at things that will allow you to give up your clinging to the way you hold them. And without that commitment, you get nothing from the Dharma. Um, so in that sense, you could say that Buddhism is 100% based on a logic that you can see and that you can understand and that you can incorporate into your own life. Now, I enjoy it because I have a kind of relationship um, with the, I call it surrender. I have a kind of relationship with surrender, and that came out of a different spiritual tradition. In Christianity, there was like the notion of surrender, the notion of humility, the notion of taking taking down, the notion of uh, uh, accepting defeat and giving the victory to others. And so it was easier for me. But if you didn't come out of that kind of tradition, didn't have that kind of practice, it might be difficult for you. If you came out of, um, say, there's some parts of Confucianism, like if that had been your practice before. And in the art of war, and like I studied the art of war, right? Because I was just in martial stuff. I had a whole lot of stuff I had to get out of me, to be successful and move further in this path of being able to accept others as oneself, to accept others like myself. The art of war even encouraged you um, to lie. So it's like if something happens and you get caught, see if there's somebody else you can blame it on. It's like win at any cost. And that was just for the success of winning. So I had that notion in my mind at one time, win at any cost, you know. And but when I started with this system, I couldn't hold that mindset and cultivate or develop myself in this system. So I had to do a lot of reading and thinking about the new way I was being asked to look at circumstances, how to get rid of an enemy. Um, in Confucianism, it gave me tools to annihilate them and be clear minded about it. Don't be wishy washy. Be clear minded. But in another spiritual tradition, it told me something that was the complete opposite. You know, if a man takes your coat, give him your cloak too. If he strikes you on one cheek, offer him up your other. And I don't mean go around let everybody beat you up. That's not. It's about developing an inner attitude towards peacemaking and towards being able to recognize the suffering of another, and that their actions are in accordance with how they think about a certain thing, the same way my actions are in accordance with how I think. And if I think in a way that's destructive, then I'm going to act in a destructive manner. So know that the action is based on the wrong thinking. And so if you could speak to a person in a way that allows them to know that you hear them, that you consider their view, um, and if we had done that, coming up in this election year, there'd be a lot less just unbridled hate in the world. Just knowing that based on one's circumstances, based on one's conditions, based on one's capacity to reason, based on things that have happened that have molded and fashioned people in a certain way, they may hold a certain view. And maybe they feel that view, they are not heard, and somebody comes along and says, I hear you, he ain't listening, but he's just saying, I hear you, then um, they feel respected. They feel, um, understood. And in that way, you can talk to them. You might be able to talk to them and convince them to do certain things or to consider even your view. But if we are so determined to have our view as the view and hating on anyone who doesn't hold that view, then uh, we're gonna be in a place of torment, and some even in a place of fear. So there's a great fear in the world today, and there's a great fear going on in our country. And I don't care how the election turns out on Tuesday. Half of the country it's gonna, they're gonna be upset. So don't think this ends on Tuesday. No, it doesn't end on Tuesday. And the only thing that we can do is walk in the intention and the aspiration of our practice, which is ahimsa, first do no harm. So sometimes we even have to accept defeat and give the victory to others. And the other ways that we have to work, he says that, the thing about winning is when you win, the one you lost to is always thinking about how to come and war against you to get it back. And so it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. It does, some things do matter. But what I'm saying is whatever outcomes are, they are the product of our own mind. You see, yes.
It's been very interesting for me personally to watch a shift of my mind from where I have been when I was, and I'm going to say when I was younger in my development and younger age-wise. I have had someone come to me, I work with her. Very conservative, very fiery conservative woman who does like to bring that challenge. And it is a beautiful space to hold and just listen. You know, even right down to, I know you early voted, I hope you voted for the right person. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? And to be able to say, I know you early voted too. I hope you voted for the person that you felt would do the job best. And you can see that that's not the answer she wants. She's looking for that challenge. And to just step away from that plate and truly step away, not having an opinion, not having anything, but to just simply bow out and make that space of ease and be able to move forward. And I think that's been a beautiful mind shift for me in a lot of ways, but that's one as we speak of this. That has been really beneficial holistically as wise speech and wise action is to just acknowledge and disengage, just
You know, it's not easy to do that because we want people to know our truth. You know, it's not easy. We want people to know our view, and we want our view to be the view. That's why, you know, we have a view, you know, and so a part of our practice is really to have a view. It's okay to have a view, but not be attached to the view. Yes.
it's interesting you say that because I think she was more frustrated because I didn't give an opinion than I challenged. She would have been pissed if I challenged her. But she was more, I could sense for her, it was harder for her because gave no opinion, just kind of simply, that was it.
Well, yeah, because you didn't agree, then she assumes that it was a reason you didn't want to say who, and that kept, you know, and so that's what hit her. But what I'm saying is that in the beginning, you start with the middle space, which is you can have an opinion, but not be attached to the opinion, because the more you attach to it, the more suffering you're going to experience if people don't agree with it. But further on down the road, you don't have an opinion about it, you know. Yes.
I mean, yeah, if you do, and you cling to it, it just keeps spinning karma forward. That's what it does. You build all these stories and actions around it, and I think that's where the suffering lies. Constantly spinning the wheel like that.
Yeah. And if your mind becomes agitated, you're not going to have the stillness that you need to be able to hold things in perspective and to offer. We are not unlimited in our energy. We're not. So we're going to use it up in some kind of way. We can use it up spinning, or we can hold steady to be able to channel it or direct it in a useful way. And so I remember what helped me with, I don't remember the number now, but when Pannavati passed, and I was thinking, my friend is gone. What I did, you can Google it and you can get the answer online. That's what I did. I Googled how many people died on May 15th, 2022. And it gave me the number of people in the world. That's how I knew that many people. It wasn't just that death hit my household, but, you know, hundreds of thousands of people died on that same day. And so it helped me to get out of my sense of this great tragedy, and to just see that it was a part of life, and it balanced me. And every time I would like feel for a little while, every time I would start to feel such a sense of great loss and poor me, and I can't take. Well, I never got that far, but but sometimes I would feel a twinge, a twinge of a sense of loss, like I lost something or someone precious to me. And I go and I do that. Google what the Buddha did was when a woman said, "Come and raise my son from the dead, you can do it." He said, "Okay, but first I need you to go to every house in the village and bring me back something from somebody that death had not hit their household, somebody that nobody in their family had died, and there wasn't anyone. By the time she came back, she was free. She could accept this dying as a part of living, but that's something that has to be put into action to set the mind, all right, you know. And so when I say this requires action and effort, I mean that you have to really go to the places that scare you, going to the opposite of how one is holding that thing that is causing them suffering. Mm. So I used to fight a lot. That's why. That's why I got into martial arts, because I could do it then, without getting in trouble. And and I remember I went to see a therapist, and the first therapy wasn't working for me. It wasn't taking care of my anger. So then they had me uh, throwing eggs. And if you're a therapist, I guess you know about that therapy. But I throw eggs, smash eggs on the sidewalk. No, but it didn't stop my aggression. So oh no, I think I started with the pillow. They had me hitting the pillow, and the pillow wasn't working. So then we tried eggs on the sidewalk, and the eggs weren't working. You know, um, we tried like four different things, and finally, what I did was I got my pistol and started shooting in the tree. Now that had such a kickback that gave me some satisfaction. But what I realized though was that my aggression was not diminishing, it was escalating. So when I thought I was dealing off aggression, I was escalating in aggression. And so I had to find a technique that went in the opposite direction. And by doing that, I was able to free myself from the aggression. Well, I'm still kind of working on it, but but I'm like, well, after I read this, I was going to say I'm like 90% there, but if I'm thinking with this attitude, I am such that I do not know right and wrong and cannot distinguish false and true. Just having that mind, I do not know right from wrong. I cannot distinguish false from true. Opens me up to be pointed towards that which frees me in the inside. And it's that freedom that I'm looking for. Um, when Thich Nhat Hanh first came to this country, his teachings were so lofty and so still. And then I noticed they got like watered down more and more and more and more. And then it's like, I'm not buying any more Thich Nhat Hanh books, and there's no disrespect to the great master, but it's like, buy one, you've bought them all. I mean, we just kept saying, and basically the same thing in every book, and just give it a different title, a different way of looking at it, but saying the same thing. And so he ran into one of his early students that he hadn't seen for about 10 years. Um, and and he said to the student, "You see, I'm still teaching the same the same thing, right? You know, that's because they don't get it. They don't get it. You know, there are other things that he wanted to teach, but because they could not get the basics, he said, no need to go any further. You gotta get this, you know. And so I'm saying to you today that it's almost like becoming the more you enter the Buddhic field, the more magnetized you become, and you can stick to it. And then as you're going through things, it becomes easier and easier for you to navigate the tough waters because you're building up your fearlessness, you're building up your courage, you're building up your evenness, you're reducing your your response. Instead of be responding to things, you're establishing a standard and a way of looking at them that where you can have no dog in the fight, and you'll experience a kind of peace. And based on that experience of peace, you'll enter into it more and more and more. And that's what's wrong with struggling in your practice. When you find that you cannot come to a certain place in mind that you can, in the Bible it said, the good I would do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, and what I don't want to do, I do. It's something like that. When you get to a place where there is something that you can't do, then he says, then just know that you have not entered into the state that allows you to behave in that particular manner. And then you don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to get angry with yourself. You can just recognize, I don't have the mind stream at this time that allows me to walk in that level of peace or contentment or non-judgment or whatever. And if you look right there, instead of where you are, but acknowledge that I don't have the mind, but I desire to step into that place, then you can be kind with yourself and you can be kind with others until you actually enter to it. And that kindness at the moment of wanting to correct or straighten something out is the opposite action that allows you to like enter into it. And so it's always looking for what is the opposite action I can take at this moment. Usually the first thing my mind tells me, that's so wrong, because first mind looks after self. So the first thing that comes to me, I like discard that almost like straight off hand. Now I go for the second or the third, I just try again. I don't feel guilty about it. I don't feel bad about it. I'm just asking the question, is this the highest and the best? And I say, no, it's not. And the very action that I'm taking of no, this is not the highest and the best that I think could be done in this situation. It's just the highest and the best I can do right now, but I don't think it's the highest and best. I turn my attention to what's the highest and the best. So one reason that I left, or I was looking for some methods that could help me, and I'm going to be finished in a few minutes, that could help me do better in becoming the kind of person that I want to become. I'm still very, very, very much on that journey. I would I would just ask myself, and And as a Christian, like we always say, what would Buddha do? What would Jesus do? That sort of thing. And we ask it, but we don't really follow it. But I really wanted to know, like, if I were Jesus, what would I do? How would I handle this? If I were Buddha, what would I do? How would I handle this? And it always comes up different from the way I think, but I hold that question. I didn't want his mercy and his grace. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be like him. And that's the difference. Whether you want, see, refuge also inspires, it inspires mastery. It inspires self-mastery. And that's why cultivation is so important. I want to be my best. And if I miss it, I don't really like go and tell everybody that I missed it. I just keep looking at what is my point of perfection, not looking for perfection in me, because when I find perfection, there'll be no notion of I am perfect. That's the bottom line. That's why trying to be perfect is a sure loser, because there is a mind, the conceit I for perfection, So the more I step away from needing to be perfect, the more I step away from needing to impress somebody, the more I step away. When I had 100 Dharmacharyas, and then I sent out a notion. I have found a teacher who let me know I know nothing, and it like upset everybody, but it was such a freedom for me, because I ain't trying to impress y'all. I'm trying to, I myself am trying to relieve my suffering, and to the extent it's relieved, I can share that with you. To the extent that it's not relieved, then I can share that with you, without guilt and condemnation. It's just that I know where I am on the map. And that's all we want to know is, where are we? And to know what our goal is. And our goal is not to be happy with our things, but our goal is to be at that place of perfect peace. That's the only way you're going to be able to be harmless. That's the only way you're going to be able to help and support another. If there's a need, I have it and you have it. Do I consider those equal? No, in some areas I do, some areas I don't. In the areas that I don't, I keep my mind on how to be more equal in my view of your needs versus my needs. So some mornings I don't feel like getting up, and I don't feel like talking to people about their problems, and I don't, but all I have to do is remember to think of them as myself. And if I was suffering, I would be looking for a good friend that could be available to me, and I move my butt. I get up and do what I have to do, drag it all the 75 years. I drag it up and make it function. But once I make that decision, and once I get into it, like I feel like I'm 35 as the day goes on, because I have forgotten about myself and I've concentrated on others. And so this aspect of forgetting about ourselves, we start to see the illusory nature of life. We start to see that it's like one big drama that we like make up in our minds. I don't mean that the situations are not real, but how we hold them, we make that up in our own mind. And that song, Misery Loves Company, and that song, Sad Songs Say So Much. If you want to hold on to that, then you will be sad. Yes.
People who need people.
Yeah.
That's another one.
people who need people. And so when we understand the role of the Dharma talk is designed to give us tools by which we can examine ourselves, how we think, and we can give up this illusory thinking that's based on what we see, what we hear, or what we taste, or what we touch, or what we smell, or what we think, and substitute it for an established universal truth that all of that is mind-made. My mind went in that direction. In the same way I took it in that direction, I have the capacity to turn it in another direction. And then my whole field of examination shifts. And when that shift comes, there is a sense of peace. What I did when the flooding came, I mean, I couldn't imagine, I never seen anything like this, been in anything like this. But what I've done is I've looked up Google again. I Googled disasters. And I just watched clip after clip. In Thailand, there's a typhoon. Somewhere in China, there's a hurricane. Somewhere in like every place, the whole world, all over the world, it's all of these kinds of things going on. It's not just in Western North Carolina. It's not just in Western North Carolina and Florida, but every place in the world, it's like nature gone wild. Um, and I said that this is common. It's common to man. And they have like the monsoons in India. I mean, every year they house floods, and they just start over every year for 10 months, and then we have 2 months of monsoon that washes it all away, and then they go back and they build again. And I'm saying, like, how can you? But even when we had the flooding in our basement, like 2 weeks later, our dirt was turning to sand. It was so dry, just in 2 weeks, you know? And so in these ways, when we see that these things are common, they're common occurrences in the world, we have to shift and have some, uh, I would say, maturity, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but in a way of being able to, maturity meaning being able to balance and hold things equally. And then when we're able to do that, then we have peace in our life. And whatever is in us, that's what we give to other people. I can't talk Dharma and be full of sorrow. I can't talk Dharma and be full of anger. Sometimes, like, I have to get myself straight before I come to give a Dharma talk, because something needs correcting in there. If it needs correcting, I correct it. Um, and once I've corrected it, done. I move on, and I can peacefully and confidently move on and share, because my words and my actions and my mind aligning up. So you can't say beautiful words, but you can't walk it out. And when it's up, you can't say that it's down. And that's why they talk about truthfulness, truthfulness, and how important truthfulness is, that you stop lying. And then after you stop lying, you stop exaggerating. I'm a storyteller, so I can, like, yeah. And when you stop exaggerating, you stop having a need to be anything in front of anybody. And there's a freedom that comes with that. I don't have to know it all. I don't have to pretend I know it all. As a matter of fact, I take the view I know nothing. And what I'm trying to pick up, it's not mystical, you know. I mean, mystery just means we haven't figured it out. That's what mystery is. And so, but once we figure it out, it's no longer a mystery, right? So what I'd like for you to do this week, if you can, is take your Dharma practice and to examine the obstacles and the problems in your life and see if you can recognize that that there's some difficulties that have arisen simply because you have really started shifting your mind. And so this is part of the process of transformation. It's like when you shine a light in the room, you can see all the dust blobs, you know. Before you couldn't see them because you hadn't turned on the light. But once you turn on the light, you start seeing all that stuff, big time. And what happens when you see it? If we fall into despair, or if we get frustrated with ourselves, what is the antidote to that? What would be the opposite to that? Now, you can't give people any more love than the love that you have for yourself. You really cannot. So this week, I want us to work on noticing what things are now coming up in our life that appear to be obstacles, and just to look deeply at them. And can we do that? And then just see how that, what effect it can have when you can look at an obstacle and not fear it, and not fear the obstacle, whether it's a way of thinking, a thought, or whether it's a way of responding and acting after you've had a certain thought. Do my follow-up actions bring relief or bring more grief? Does it bring, a sense of kindness and understanding the suffering another person may be going through, that's based on the way they think or the way, they have been raised or whatever, or the fears that they have. Fear makes them act that way. They're afraid of me. No, there was a time that officer friendly, when I was growing up, they were peace officers. Now they're enforcement officers. So there was a time I had no fear of a policeman. But as times change, I'm gonna just tell you, Black folk, I don't care what's happening, try to handle it yourself. Don't call the police. And that's a fact in America. And like I'm just talking like frankly to you now. So you have to look at and so I have a certain mindset towards policemen. I have to work on it constantly. Constantly. They have a kind of insurance called driving while Black. And it's A.L. Williams. I don't know if it's still out now, but when my children were growing up, I got them that insurance. And it is like, if police pulls you over, don't say anything, just give them the card and says, I have a lawyer, here's their phone number, you know, give them your ID and your insurance card. And and when I mentioned it in our tricycle article, I think it's tricycle or one of the other ones, they said, oh, that's not true. You know, oh, it's absolutely true. You know, check it out for yourself. And they did, and they came back and they apologized. They said, we didn't know any such thing existed. I said, well, you wouldn't. I mean, because you're not like me, brown like me. I said, but these are things we have to do, you know, like to protect ourselves. Now, I'm not like mad and I'm not hating. I'm just trying to protect my children. And not in a rebellious fighting way, stand up for your rights. No, that could get you killed, you know. I can just to show you how to yield, how to submit, and I will do everything else that I can do by lawfully to protect you. So uh, I don't have to have you shipped off in a body bag. You can't just say anything you want. You can't. Some of us can, you know. So I'm looking at these dynamics now. Truly, am closing in 3 minutes. These dynamics in life and the things that upset you, whether we're talking about women's rights, or whether we're talking about women ordaining, you know, and they were talking about women, you know, can't ordain. There's no women nuns in Thailand. I'm like, that ain't true, because I've been there and I've ordained 50. And so it's at least 50, but I don't have to talk about it. I don't have to go and demand. I don't have them parading in the street. I didn't have them parading in the street. I just had to quietly you ordain and go on and live your life. You know, that's the way. And now you can't stop it. This thousands of ordained nuns, female monks in Thailand. And just because the monastic order, them because the male monastic order doesn't accept them, doesn't mean that they're not there. You see, so I don't have to make that a point to fight about. It's about living out the life, not about who gives you a right. And so these are ways that we can bring about change without fighting. We just quietly do what we can do, you know, and we don't even have to talk about it. Maybe more can get done if we don't talk about it, but we just quietly do it. Mm. And then the sense of aggression does not have to be there. And you'll stop running when nobody's chasing you. Mm. I think that's where I want to end for today. Utilizing the knowledge that you get to actually change your life. That's the first step. And as your life changes, you create a field. And when people enter your field, they will find some relief simply because they've entered your field. And they can begin to get an inner strength to know that they too can be this way. They too can have this peace. They too can have this clarity. They too can have this mastery. And you don't even have to say anything. They just need to be in your field. So know that when your field is dirty, that it affects people greatly. And we may not outwardly intend to harm them, but we do harm them. Can somebody close for me? today. So this should give you joy, not to rely on how you feel. FEEL. Don't rely on how you feel. Just rely on what the Dharma says. And the more you rely on it, the more you will take on that same mind. And that's how you transform. So gradual. So easily. It becomes an anchor that sustains you through all the vicissitudes of life. Yeah.
May the merit of our practice here today, our listening to Dharma, benefit us and benefit all who encounter us. May the changes in the awareness we build about our own flaws, and we then see the quality in all the flaws we see in others. Stop blaming them for our pain. Start realizing we're all in this together. We all have the same work to do. May all come to be able to see the true over the false.
Some.